All right, let's dive into something pretty incredible, neuroplasticity. And this isn't just some abstract scientific theory. We're going to break down exactly how you can intentionally, physically, change your own brain.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if you could learn new skills faster, break bad habits, or even get rid of old anxieties? It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But it's a biological reality. All of it is possible, but only if you know how to flip the right switches in your brain.
So before we can get to how to turn your brain on for learning, we've got to talk about a huge misunderstanding most of us have about how this whole process works.
I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, right? It's this really nice, feel-good idea that just by going through life, reading books, listening to talks, we're constantly growing. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, but it's not really true. You can sit through hours of lectures, you can read a whole library of books, but if your brain isn't in the right biological state for learning, almost nothing happens. The experience just washes right over you, leaving no trace behind.
So what is this correct state? Well, here's the thing. An adult's brain is not like a child's brain, which is basically a learning machine that's always on. For us to learn, a very specific switch needs to be flipped.
You know how kids are like little sponges? Their brains are just these raw open networks, constantly and passively soaking up information. But when we become adults, that process becomes intentional. Our brains can absolutely still change 100%, but now they're waiting for very specific signals to give them the green light.
So what are these signals? What's the secret password? Well, it all boils down to 3 key chemical signals that have to happen at the exact same time to trigger that rewiring process, to trigger neuroplasticity.
Here they are, alertness, attention, and then applying them through focused repetition. You can think of it like a 3-digit combination to a lock. Get all 3 right, in order, and click, your brain opens up for business. So let's break them down.
First up, alertness. And this is way more than just being awake. This is a chemical event. Your brain releases epinephrine. You probably know it as adrenaline. It's the starter pistol for your entire nervous system. It's basically your brain shouting, okay, wake up, pay attention, something is about to happen.
Okay, so the starter pistol has fired. Next comes attention. Once you're alert, you have to focus on something specific. When you do that, your brain releases another chemical, acetylcholine. And the best way to imagine this is like a spotlight. It shines a bright, narrow beam on a specific set of brain cells, telling them, this right here, this is what's important. Write this down.
And this, right here, is the moment of magic. When you get that jolt of alertness combined with that chemical spotlight of attention, and you point them both at an experience, well, that's when the physical rewiring begins. The connections between those neurons literally get stronger or weaker. That is neuroplasticity in action.
So how do we trigger this state whenever we want? Well, here's a wild little trick. It starts with your eyes. When your gaze is broad and panoramic, just kind of taking everything in, your brain is relaxed. But the second you visually focus on one small point, really stare at it, your brain automatically triggers the learning mechanism. It releases both epinephrine and acetylcholine. It's like a built-in cheat code. Visual focus creates mental focus.
Now, you can't just keep this intense focus going all day long. Your brain just isn't built for that kind of marathon. Most of us learn best in these focused 90-minute cycles. The most effective people out there, they don't try to just power through 8 hours straight. They work with their brain's natural rhythm of intense focus, followed by a really important rest break.
And that rest break, well, that brings us to the most counterintuitive and honestly maybe the most critical part of this entire process. It's all about what happens after you focus.
So let's say you've done everything right. You put in the focused effort. You were alert. You paid close attention. But is that when the learning actually gets locked in?
The answer is a hard no. The real, lasting change, the rewiring, it doesn't happen during the struggle and the strain. It happens afterwards, it happens when you're resting, and most of all, it happens when you're asleep.
During deep rest and sleep, your brain gets to work. It's like a construction crew coming in overnight. It strengthens all those important new connections you just flagged. It also starts tearing down the old, unnecessary pathways you don't use anymore. It's literally solidifying new information into long-term knowledge. Skipping rest is like writing an entire essay and then just closing the laptop without ever hitting save. So, you see, when we put all these pieces together, this is so much more than just a list of learning hacks. This is a user manual for redesigning your own brain.
And here's the most empowering truth of all. Your brain is not fixed. It's not this static thing. It was designed to be redesigned by you for your entire life. You always have the capacity to change.
So it all comes down to this simple 3-step framework. First, you get alert. Second, you apply deep, narrow focus to whatever it is you want to learn. And third, and this is just as important, you absolutely have to prioritize deep rest and sleep to let all those changes actually stick.
And this really says it all. When you truly understand this process and start to use it, you're not just learning faster, you're not just being more productive, you are taking active, conscious control over your own mind. You literally become the architect of your own brain.
So that just leaves one final question. Now that you know the code, alertness, focus, and rest, what change will you choose to make? How are you going to use these signals to start rewiring your brain today?